Either. Now here is a map of the United States. You see TVA down here in the Tennessee Valley. CIO believes, and a great many other people do too, that if we had more Tennessee Valley authorities, like out in the Missouri Valley Authority, the Columbia Valley Authority out in the west, Hell's Canyon Project, and you remember the discussion we had up in Niagara. See, if TVA were expanded, and if we had more TVAs in other parts of the country, all of the prosperity that TVA has meant in terms of more purchases of electrical equipment, electrical utility, major items, that we would have a lot more prosperity in this country. We'd be a lot nearer the higher $500 million annual income that we are talking about in CIO. Now let's talk about the hard money policy that the present administration in Washington talked about. Remember they said that we needed to have higher interest. They said that they were just going to raise the interest rates 1/2% because the people who got the money to lend are holding on to it. They won't lend it at the low interest rates that prevailed under the Roosevelt and Truman administrations. Now let's see what that's meant. They call it the hard money policy. Let's just see what it's meant. You remember a veteran under the VA, a VA loan to a veteran provided for 4% interest on a mortgage when he bought a home. And a civilian could get an FHA loan. That was 4.5% interest. Well, they have now come along and said the money that they used to lend is sort of dried up, so in effect, the big power company, the big banking interest and insurance companies and investment houses, they just went on strike. They wouldn't lend any money. So they want an extra 1/2% interest. A veteran or a civilian borrowing money for a house now, under the new hard money policy, it means that if you borrow $10,000 now, that if you pay that mortgage off in 25 years, you're going to pay in just 1/2% more interest. That 1/2% means $840 more interest. Now, the real estate lobby will say this doesn't amount to much. Some of them talk in terms of this extra 1/2% only costs 15 cents a thousand per month. That figure is not true either. But $840 is actually the amount of money 1/2% cost a borrower of money who borrows for 25 years $10,000 to pay for a house. Well, that's sort of the bankers' political action program. That's part of big business, the bankers. And if you don't have to just buy a house. You don't have to borrow $10,000. If you just want to borrow $5,000, it won't cost you $840, but it'll cost you $420. If you borrow $5,000 for 25 years. But when you buy a car, you pay higher interest now. You buy a washing machine or a refrigerator or a stove, you pay higher interest now. You buy a television set, you pay higher interest. That means more dollars in interest going into the bankers' political action program, more profits for them. And then the tax burden, the question of taxes. Big business program is to shift the tax burden so that the mass of the people who are least able to pay will shoulder the biggest part of the tax burden, and those who are most able to pay will pay less of it. And that means more money in their pockets. Take the income tax cut. You remember during the campaign they were saying they were going to reduce income taxes 10%. Well, income tax cut for the average person, a lot of people thought it was going to mean bigger savings. But let's see, who here knows just how much last year he paid in income tax? How much did you pay? What did your W-4 form say that you filed your income tax report with? Well, there's one boy says he paid $301. Well, he must not have many dependents, or he must make a good wage. All right, you paid $301. Now, 10% tax cut means 10% of $300. That's $30. That's 58 cents a week. That's how much you save. But they're going to talk about, they're talking about something else to take care of that little thing, and I'll get to that in just a minute. You know, the first of the year, our 10% tax cut went into effect. Also, going into effect at the same time was the elimination of the excess profits tax. Big business is saving more than the people are saving by the 10% tax. You take off the excess profits tax, and it means that big business saves more money than the total 10% income tax for the rest of the people. Actually, what it adds up to is they've given big business more tax cut when they eliminate excess profits than they gave to the income tax payers as individuals in the country, but they're also talking about lowering the taxes further, doing away with excess profits, excise taxes in April and other taxes. It adds up to $8.5 billion that the government is not going to collect in taxes if that whole program goes through. Well, now they're going to say, well, we've lost $8.5 billion income that we used to get in taxes, and we've got to balance the budget. Don't you remember that we said we was also going to balance the budget if you elected us? So big business got elected, and so they're going to cut taxes, $8.5 billion, but they still got to balance the budget, and so they're talking about a sales tax. Well, they're not talking much about a sales tax now because the people know what that is. So they're going to disguise it. They're going to say it's a manufacturer's excise tax. Actually, it's going to cost more. The consumer is going to pay more under a manufacturer's excise tax law than he would under a sales tax law. So let's go back to you now that you saved $30 when you got a 10% tax cut. You paid $300 last year income tax, and you got 10% cut in it, so that saves you $30. Now let's talk about a 5% manufacturer's tax, manufacturer's excise tax. How much money do you think you might spend next year for consumer items, like groceries and anything that you buy? Anything that you buy. You think you might spend $200? Would you spend $200? Well, 5% of $200 is $10. Now, if you spend $600, all of that $30 you save with the income tax cut of 10% is wiped out, and everything you spend over $600, brother, you're going to be paying through the nose more taxes. So you didn't gain by the 10% income tax cut. You're going to lose. And the average housewife, and here is a picture that sort of shows this up. The average working family in this country, or let's say the family in this country that makes $4,200 total income. That's $350 a month income. That family, under this manufacturer's excise tax program, is going to spend for food, $228 more a year. Now that's extra taxes. That is $198. You save $30, going to spend $228. You $198 in the hole, which would have been the cheapest there, to have made your dollar contribution to CIO-PAC, or to pay out an extra $198 from your income. And now we have a picture here, and it's up to us to start doing some deciding here. We've got to look at this realistically. What is the result? What happened? Now, big business is getting its program through, and who is going to suffer the most, and who is going to benefit the most? It's obvious that if big business program goes into effect, and they've already got part of it, and they're after the rest of it, that big business is going to benefit, and we're going to lose. So it's pretty obvious now that we got to give to political action one way or the other. We can voluntarily give $1 and get our CIO-PAC receipt to show for it. Or we won't have a receipt, but we'll have a lot less money because we're going to give a whole lot more money to Big Business Political Action Program. And the CIO program calls for full employment. When you give your dollar to CIO-PAC, and when you go out and register to vote, and when you go and vote, and when you get others to do the same thing, you are helping to promote and put into effect CIO's program of full employment. And if you don't give your dollar to CIO-PAC, you're going to be giving a lot more dollars to Big Business Political Action Program, and this is the result. So it's up to you. We are going to give our dollar to PAC, or we are, let's see, Henry, I've lost something here. Yep. So it's up to you. We're going to give our dollar to CIO-PAC, and we're going to get other people to give their dollars to CIO-PAC voluntarily, and we're going to do the other things that are called for to promote our CIO program. And if we don't, then the Big Business program is going to go into effect. It's going to cost us a lot more. It's going to mean that our kids will have less opportunity. It's going to mean going back to the things that CIO has fought in all the days gone by. It means that we can't realize our guaranteed annual wage program as soon as we would otherwise. It means all of those things, and here, of course, you can just weave in anything you want to, and that cuts it out, young fella.